These are the corrections for the week 13 passage of Fix It 5, Chanticleer. Jumping right in, we are going to indent, not because we have a new speaker, but because Chanticleer is starting a new topic, a new story. Remember, he was talking about the man whose traveling companion was killed in a cart and it was revealed to him in a dream. Now Chanticleer is giving another example of another story to Pertalot. It's easy to forget because it was so long ago that he started his justification for his dream. So we'll go ahead and indent here because he has a new paragraph. We have to, because it's a new paragraph. We didn't close the quotations last week, but we're going to open them up here because he's starting a new paragraph. This is a number 2 opener, according to, that's a prepositional phrase, according to the self-same erudite book. I took this comma out here after self-same because it's describing the erudite book, self-same is. So it's cumulative adjectives. And then if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words, when a prepositional phrase is that long, 5 words or more, we are going to have a comma after it. I read, right in the chapter following this, I do not lie, since I hope for joy or bliss, a tale about 2 merchants who wished to cross the sea to enter a faraway country. So notice here we have I read. This was kind of confusing because you have clauses within clauses, but the beginning of that em dash is right here. So I read, what did you read? A tale about 2 merchants. That's finishing up what he was saying. So we have our beginning em dash here after read. So we need to, instead of a comma after bliss, we need to have another em dash to close out this interruption. And we know it's the interruption because this word a tale about goes with I read. So this is all an interruption. Right in the chapter following this, I do not lie, since I hope for joy or bliss. That doesn't make any sense, but that's how Chanticleer is talking. He's giving another example, but it's 2 merchants who wish to cross the sea, specific 2 merchants. So that's essential information. So we're no comma there. To cross the sea to enter a faraway country. Okay, so prepositional phrases we have according to the self-same erudite book, in the chapter following this, in the chapter and following this are both prepositional phrases. For joy or bliss is a prepositional phrase. And that's all. So subjects and verbs, we have I read, read is the verb, I is the subject. I do not lie, do lie is the verb, I is the subject. Notice I took out this comma after I do not lie because what follows, I do not lie, is the main clause. What follows is an adverbial clause. Now you'll notice I maybe have to begin this so you can see. Yeah, you see this parenthesis and this parenthesis here are ones that actually were in the story. That's a parenthetical expression. This one here and this bracket here are marking the main clause, and this one is marking the adverbial clause. So that wouldn't have been, if you were typing this up again, that wouldn't be in the typed up version, the corrected version. Since I hope is the verb, I is the subject, and the merchants who wished is the verb, who is the subject. Self-same, you notice you have 2 vocabulary words. One is the self-same and the other is erudite. Self-same just means identical. This very same book, the way of saying that. And erudite means characterized by great knowledge. So it's a smart person would be reading this book, is what they're trying to hint. So day 2, because the winds were contrary, that's number 5 opener. So we need a comma. We do not need a semicolon here. I see this a lot, people having a dependent clause and then a semicolon with however. Sometimes you will see however when it's joining things with a semicolon, but that happens when this first part is a main clause. It could be a sentence by itself. you should be able to put a period there if you have a semicolon. You couldn't here because it would be a fragment. So it just requires a comma. But remember, it was either none or two with these transitional words. So because the winds were contrary, however, so on either side, they had to wait at a harbor town. That's the end of the thought, so put a period there. Within a few days in the eventide, two prepositional phrases in a row beginning the sentence, so we need a comma. The wind began to change and blew just like they wished. No, we're not comparing. Just as they wished. You have a subject and a verb, so you need the adverbial clause as. And then here, the wind did two things. It began to change and it blew just as they wished. So we take this comma out because it's joining the two verbs of the sentence. It is not joining two sentences. So prepositional phrases, we have at a harbor town, within a few days, in the eventide, and that's all. So subjects and verbs. The winds were contrary, were is the verb, winds is the subject. They had to wait, had is the verb, they is the subject. The wind began and blew. It did two things. So blew and began are our verbs, and the wind is what did it. And then as they wished, wished is our verb, they is the subject. When you talk about eventide, in the eventide, that's evening time. So you just say in the evening is what we would say nowadays, but in this kind of archaic way of speaking, that's what they call it eventide. Day 3, still not indenting because he's still telling the same story, right? In high spirits, they therefore took their rest with plans to sail early on the morrow. Remember, that means the next day. Got a couple things to correct. They took their, it belonged to them, so THEIR, their rest, with plans to sail, SAIL, in a boat, not to go look for bargain, early on the morrow. That's the end of the thought. Now we have to, if you can see it here, indent again, because we're having a change in time. Still Chanticleer, so we didn't have a close quote. This is still Chanticleer speaking, but Chanticleer starting a new paragraph. So, because he has a change in time. Before the sun rose the next morn. Here you have before, but this is actually a number 5 opener. Before is commonly a preposition, but notice you have a subject and a verb following it. The sun rose. So that makes it an adverbial clause. Preceding a main clause, so you need a comma with it. One of the merchants who lay, that's past tense of lie, who lay sleeping, dreamed a prescient dream. This who is describing, it's identifying for us which merchants, okay, which one. So it's essential and we don't have commas with it. And we'll just go for subjects and verbs here. Notice here, I don't have commas with therefore, because it's not necessary to have that pause. They therefore took their rest. It sounds better to say they therefore took their rest with plans to sail. See how there's no commas needing there. So sometimes that's why they say either two separated on both sides or none, but don't have it just on one side of them. Our verb is took, and who took? They did. Before the sun rose the next morning, rose is our verb. What rose? The sun did. One of the merchants dreamed a prescient dream. Dream is our verb. This part right here is interrupting our main clause. So dreamed is our verb and one is the subject. We know that one is the subject because of the merchants. It's not going to be a merchant because that's the object of this preposition of. One of the merchants who lay sleeping, lay is the verb, and who is the subject. Through vocabulary, this word prescient means having foresight of events before they happen. So he dreamed a foreshadowing dream, kind of a foretelling dream. Day 4, he thought, we're still talking about his dream, so we're not going to indent. He thought a man stood by the periphery of his bedside and warned him to abide in the town. Now, the man is going to say something in Chanticleer's story. So if you look closely, we're indenting because you have a new speaker. So we have to have, this was my mistake, double quotes. Now you're not going to be able to see it. Double quotes because Chanticleer is speaking again. And then a single quote to actually identify the speech of the merchant or the man by the bedside. Let me do this and I'll share again so you can see. There we go. So you've got a mess is what it looks like, but you have indent for your paragraph, double quotes for Chanticleer starting a new paragraph, and single quote for the man at the bedside speaking. And what he says is, if you are led to depart tomorrow, you will certainly be drowned. That's the end of his quote. Chanticleer hasn't finished his quote, so we don't have a double quote ending that there. These get pretty confusing, don't they? It can start to feel like when you have a speaker, like a quote within a quote, it can start to feel like parentheses in math problems a little bit. Other things to note, bedside is one word, and a man did two things. He stood by the bedside and he warned him. So this and here, the coordinating conjunction, that is joining the two verbs, not two sentences. So we don't need a comma after bedside. So he thought, thought is our verb. He is the subject. What did he think? This is kind of implied that he thought that a man stood by the periphery of his bedside and warned him to abide in town. That's a dependent clause. Stood and warned are the verbs. This stood here and warned, and man is the subject. And he said, if you are led to depart tomorrow, are led is our verb, and you is the subject. Then you will certainly be drowned. Will be drowned is the verb, and you is the subject. We just have these three prepositional phrases in this one: by the periphery of his bedside and in the town. Periphery just means something on the edge or the outskirts. So if it's the periphery of his bedside, he's standing there by the side of the bed. Hopefully that makes sense. And that is it for the week 13 corrections for Fix It 5. This is the last Fix It that's assigned fall semester. I am going to continue making videos so that I can get ahead on them throughout Christmas break, and I'll upload them. I do have channels now that I believe are public that you could find, and maybe I'll send out links after I get all my grading done for the semester to each of the Fix It channels so that you can maybe subscribe to a channel and see each new one as they come up. I won't delay putting them up, so you'll be able to just go each week and try to find the Fix It, Learn It, and corrections if you want to get ahead like I'm trying to get ahead. Otherwise, if you do that, let me know you're doing it. Otherwise, you can start back up again in January when we get back to class and they're assigned each week. If you do that, you will need to go back and read your old Fix-Its so that you remember this story. Talk with your parents about it and decide what you want to do, and just let me know what you're going to do there. Otherwise, have a great holiday break, and I look forward to seeing you again in January.